We're live.
All right. So, hello everyone, and thank you for listening slash watching. So, this is the confirmation hearing for Benjamin Roy, who has been nominated to be Federal Reserve's chairman by incumbent President Adam Evans. So, we have technically a quorum. There's four senators out of nine, but Vice President is watching by YouTube, and I think some other senators. Um, so how will we conduct this hearing? Well, as we did last ones, so we will get each senator will get 3 questions per round, and we'll go by home states from the westernmost to the easternmost, or by senate districts, however you want. So I think I have said everything that I need to, and we can start. That would mean I would go first, then Jacob Tony, then Drake Ranfield, and then uh, Griffin Bates. Although, if any other senator joins, that will probably be changed. Or if any other senator who is watching by YouTube has any questions, he/she can send those to any of the senators being currently in the call. So we need to start. The first one would be to ask questions would be me. So
If you
Benjamin.
find a way to mention Kosovo, I will hurt you.
So, what do you think of Kosovo? Joking. So the first real question is, why do you think you have the right qualifications and the right knowledge to be Federal Reserve's chairman?
Sure. Before I begin to answer the question, I'd just like to go ahead and thank everyone present today for allowing us to conduct this hearing. It is an honor to be nominated. I really appreciate President Evans for considering me and eventually nominating me. I do want to go ahead and apologize to senators who expected this hearing to be at 7 o'clock, which was the original scheduled time, and I had to unfortunately move it to 7:30 due to personal reasons involving family. As for your question, I'm actually a current student in high school. I'm a graduating, soon to be graduating senior, but I'm actually dual enrolled with a few colleges, including the University of Cambridge in Cambridgeshire, England. They have a program at my high school, and they have a few of their courses available to me, including economics, which I took last year, and I have passed, and I do have a credit from them directly for economics, for 1 year's worth of economics. Additionally to that, I'm actually taking the College Board. I'm actually in the College Board's AP Capstone program. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that. And so I'm also taking another year of economics, AP Macro, AP Micro, and I have altogether I've around 20 college credits under my belt before graduation. Um, and so I feel my extensive knowledge and deep understanding of the economy, how it works, the ins and outs, as well as the role of the Federal Reserve in the economy, qualifies me over any other prospect.
All right, thank you. That's it for question one. No follow-ups. Question number two. Um, um, can you describe the position you're nominated for in 1 to 3 sentences? And if you can, please do.
Sure. So the position I'm nominated for, which is Federal Reserve Chairman, basically the Federal Reserve, I feel like the best way to describe this would be by explaining what the Federal Reserve is, which is basically um, the entity that regulates between the federal government and the banks, federal banks. So federally recognized banks, members of the FDIC. Basically, we guarantee, the recognition of the banks and the fact that they are legitimate banks. We guarantee their loans, etc. And the main role of the chairman, who is appointed typically in the real world to up to 7 consecutive terms of 2 years, is to facilitate all that, as well as sell and buy bonds. That's major. That's basically the most of it is selling and buy bonds. That's how you control inflation. That's how you control unemployment and control all these factors of the economy through interest rates, as well as set policy for those banks, referring to loans.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Roy. Third and final question from me would be, well, there's no more general questions, so I'll just skip question number 3, Senator Tony of Texas.
Okay. Well, first, thank you for being here. And under the original bill that was passed that created this position, there was a part of it called the conflict of interest, and it read, no member of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System shall be an officer or director of any banking institution, trust company, or Federal Reserve Bank, or hold stock in any bank. So, will you pledge here today in this Senate that you do not currently own any stock in any banking institution, or trust company, and you will not under your term?
Well, thank you, Jacob, for the question, or actually the request for the pledge. I can full-heartedly pledge that, considering we don't really have banks. This is, a simulation, of course, and so I don't think that would affect my job or any of the sorts. So yes, to answer your question, your request, yes, I believe I can.
Okay, thank you. Right now, that's all the questions I have. I'm going to think of some for the next round. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Tony and Senator Cranfield, for the first time ever.
It's pretty cool, actually. I've been in your position, Mr. Roy, plenty of times, and I must say it's a surreal feeling. Anyway, so as you said in your quote-unquote opening statement, or the first question, or whatever you call it, there's a lot of regulations and rules that go into the Federal Reserve. So my question to you is, as the Federal Reserve Chairman, how would you plan to uphold, if you choose to uphold, and supervise the banking institutions and their regulations?
Sure. So I believe what your question to me is, are you asking me what methods I would use?
So basically what I'm asking is, do you plan to enhance the regulations on banking institutions, deregulate, so to speak? Just a broad question relating to rules and regulations and supervision on federal banking institutions.
Okay. So for regulations, I feel like that should, mostly be in the power of Congress. I don't feel like I should have too much of a responsibility with that. Another thing is, there's also Treasury policy, which currently our Treasury, I believe, is AWOL or something like that. I'm not entirely sure with the whole situation. That would have to be an answer I would have to get back to you with. My main focus as Federal Reserve Chairman is just to ensure that the inflation stays low relative to 2% and the unemployment does not exceed 5%. And if it does, make sure I get that under control.
Okay, is that it?
You tell me.
Is that your answer?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I've got another question. So do you think that the responsible? Hold on, just a quick second.
Senator Cranfield, just keep in mind that
I
if
yield my
you're
time. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay. Senator Bates, because it was already mentioned. So.
Okay. So, in general, what would be your policy to prevent inflation?
Are you saying like in the sense? It depends on what's. Can you give me a scenario relative to? Are you saying is there high inflation right now? Are you trying to give me a scenario of high inflation? And what would I do to combat that?
Yeah. If inflation were to increase, what would you do to combat that?
I would probably increase the interest rates, increase the requirement of how much banks have to hold in their on hand so they can't loan out too many loans. An increase in loans would result in higher inflation and higher higher employment, which would lead to stagflation. So to combat inflation, it would be increase interest rates, deter loans, and to do that would be through policy of with banks and making sure they don't loan out too much money.
Okay. And what would be the differences in how you would regulate big banks compared to small banks?
There would be no difference as long as the banks are members of the FDIC and they are federally recognized. Then as long as it's under my jurisdiction, I don't see a difference.
So so all banks would have identical regulations.
Yes.
All right, those are my questions.
In prospect to the federal chairman and the Federal Reserve. Yes.
Those are all my questions.
All right. So, well, that means it's my turn. So, one of the roles of the Federal Reserve is, among other things, is being a central bank, and this is a little bit more debated question now. But do you think that it's a just reason for Federal Reserve for America to have Federal Reserve acting as central bank or central bank at all? And why?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Do you think that it is just / fair for America to have a central bank at all? And why?
I do not feel that that question, in all respect, I don't feel that question is relevant to the hearing and my position as federal chair. That would be a question that you should ask the senators and the body of the Congress.
I'm asking you for your opinion because Federal Reserve has a role of a central bank in the United States. And
right,
for nominating you for the position, we would like to know your stance because you may not be such a fan of that idea and you want to change something. So I'm trying to ask you a question, but okay, it's your choice. Senator Tony, when he was representative, had a good bill called Money Reformation Act that got rid of the pennies. And, well, again, Federal Reserve does touch into issues of the nation's coin and paper currency. So what is your opinion on that?
The Federal Reserve does not coin currency. That would be a question for the Secretary of the Treasury when his
No, I
nomination comes
get
up.
that. I'm saying it touches into the issues.
Right.
And
So
it issues, and not to mention it issues the nation's coin paper currency. So I don't see why you shouldn't answer this question. But if you don't want to, you don't have to.
if you want me to answer it, I can. The best I can say is if it
It's
costs
your
more
choice.
to make.
No. It's your choice.
Are you asking me what my opinion on the act is? Is that what your question is?
I'm asking your opinions, or should we issue pennies? Literally. Because we
If
know
it
there
was up
have
to me,
been.
if I was Secretary of the Treasury, or if I was the president, or any position of power where that was up to me, if it exceeded the cost of what it's supposed to be worth, I don't see why it would be logical to continue.
Okay. So, um, so, um, just a quick, um, just a quick fact check. I believe Senator Cranfield warned you the chair is chosen in real life, for 4 years and maximum of 7 consecutive terms. Um, what, um, what is your What is your main plan? What would you seek to do the most if you get confirmed for the job?
I'm sorry, you cutting in and out. Can you repeat that one more time?
So, what will be your number one priority if we confirm you?
In a few words, making sure the economy is growing at a rate in which it's substantial, where we're not overgrowing, where there should be a huge amount of inflation, but also where we're not, decreasing in GDP so much so that it hurts business confidence and consumer confidence too much. So keeping the unemployment controlled and keeping the interest rates and inflation controlled.
All right. Then Senator Tony,
Okay.
it's your time.
Thank you. So part of the responsibility of the chairman of the Federal Reserve is to meet 8 times a year with the FOMC and other members of the Board of Governors, along with the 5 reserve presidents of the Fed. So when you meet with those people, what are you going to do to make sure that small banks and big banks have fair representation, and that you can do the best out of the meeting to get what's best for the American people?
Sure. So I believe those Fed presidents are representing regions, and those banks would be in those regions. So by having those representatives meeting with me, it would be up to them to make sure that all the banks that are federally recognized are in fact recognized in that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Second question. So, IBKR clients can borrow at rates as low as 3.68% or less against their account and earn 1.68% on idle cash in the securities in accounts over $10,000 if the NAV exceeds 100,000 in US dollars. And so they can earn, borrow, spend, and invest on over 120 markets worldwide from one account. So would you regulate that to lower the amount of markets that these banks can exchange on and what they can do with them, or would you expand it to help expand economic opportunity for those banks and bring in more money?
I think that's a great question. I appreciate your the depth of that question. Has been so far the best one I've heard tonight. But it's still early, so we'll see. To answer your question, I feel like that would have to be. I'm sided towards expanding that, just because it would help give us more opportunities when it comes to the U.S. dollar. As to if the U.S. dollar is more out there, more in the world, then it also increases the worth of that dollar. Now, of course, like I said, that would add an additional tool for the Federal Reserve. If we're able to help kind of control that, it depends on the economy and the situation in which we're in. If it has to be a tool that could be used to strengthen the dollar, which would increase inflation, then maybe we'd go for it. I think really it's up to what the banks feel. But I definitely think it's an important tool to be used in the future.
Thank you. That concedes. That's my questioning for this round.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Senator Tony, Senator Cranfield. Senator Cranfield.
Maybe he'll be active if we say that Joe Donnelly actually won.
Joe Donnelly won. There was a surprise recount. Mike Pence died.
Oh my God, Mike Pence was just shot.
Let's try not to get the actual Secret Service in here.
It's the equivalent of
Okay, Senator Bates.
Okay. I only have one question, which is, what is your opinion on Jerome Powell, the current Fed chair, in real life?
We'll have to see if he raises interest rates or not.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
Senator Cranfield, are you here? Right now, then we're going to myself again. So, do you think that sorry, just a half minute. Do you think that breaking Glass-Steagall was a good idea back in the 1990s when Bill Clinton signed that act that passed both chambers of the Congress, and why do you think so?
Are you referring to? I'm sorry. Can you repeat that one more time?
Yes. Do you think that breaking Glass-Steagall was a good idea, and why? I'm referring to the bill that passed and was signed into law in the late 1990s under presidency of Bill Clinton.
If I'm not, Glass-Steagall, wasn't that implemented under President FDR?
I'm talking about breaking it. It was implemented under the FDR, correct?
And then it was repealed.
I'm not asking that.
You're asking me what my appeal. It's relevant to the question, though. You're asking me what my
Yeah,
opinion is.
I know it's relevant to the question, but I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you, do you think it was
I
a smart...
understand. It was an inquiry of clarification. I think. Well, I know it has an effect on the economy. By the reason why it was implemented in the first place was because of the financial crisis that we faced right before, and which led to the Great Depression. And then shortly after we repealed it, less than 10 years later, we see another financial crisis. I don't think that's a coincidence. They say things happen in 10 years, based on economic policies from 10 years prior. So I do think part of it was, problematic. I mean, it's pretty self-evident.
Okay, good. Hmm. I believe the Senator Cranfield is back. That's a good thing.
Yep.
That's good. If Senator Tony left, we cannot proceed if Senator Tony doesn't.
Sorry, I
Oh, okay, good. You almost finished this hearing. Okay. Now, okay, I'll pass to Senator Tony.
Okay, thank you. So the current Federal Reserve districts are made up of 12 districts across the country, with the capitals of each district, District 12 being San Francisco, 11 being Dallas, 10 being Kansas City, 9 being Minneapolis, 7 being Chicago, 8 being St. Louis, 6 being Atlanta, 5 being Richmond, Cleveland being number 4, Philadelphia being District 3, New York City being District 2, and Boston being District 1. So, would you or would you propose any change of these districts, either redistricting or changing of the capitals of these districts to help further the Federal Reserve banks?
Why would I?
I'm just asking if you would.
I mean, I answered your question with the question. The answer would be no, unless I find it appropriate, which I don't at the current time. I don't find it necessary. No.
Okay. So the Federal Reserve has responsibilities for supervising and regulating some of these following segments of the financial industry, including state chartered banks, bank holding companies, saving and loan holding companies, foreign branching of state member banks, Edge Act and Agreement corporations, U.S. operations of foreign bank organizations, and various operations of other foreign banking organizations. So, would you include any other financial institutions into this, or would you remove some?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that list one more time?
Okay, the list is state chartered banks, bank holding companies, saving and loan holding companies, foreign branches of state member banks, Edge Act and Agreement corporations, U.S. operations of foreign banking organizations, and various operations of other foreign banking organizations.
I mean, I don't see an issue with the way it is. If there's an issue that comes about it, I'm sure, changes will be implemented. But at the current time, I don't see an issue with it. Especially, I could see some concern or some people questioning why foreign banks would be relevant. And again, that has to do with, buying and selling U.S. dollars abroad, and strengthening the currency. So, in order to propose a more inclusive policy as federal chair, which allows us to have better resources available to control inflation and unemployment. I don't see an issue with including what we have already.
Okay, thank you. And last question of this round. So there are three different head office directors: Class A directors, Class B directors, and Class C directors, which are all elected by the bank boards of their district. Some argue that this election system is corrupt and rigged because big banks only do what is best for their certain bank and organization. So, would you propose any reformation into changing the way these elections are held to make it more fair for the American people?
Okay, so you're referring to Class A, Class B, Class C voting members?
Directors. They're all elected by. Class C is appointed by the board of governors, but Class B and Class A are elected by member banks in the district. But some are arguing that that is corrupt because banks only do what's best for them. So, would you propose any reformations to that?
I'm leaning towards no. I would have to get back to you on that. In all honesty, I would have to do a little bit more research on that. As far as I'm concerned, my job is to make sure the economy stays healthy. Banks are going to do what they feel are best for them as well, and that's understandable. And so, really, what it comes down to when it comes to something like that, and I can't do anything about it, which shouldn't be an issue, but when it comes to something like that, I feel like that would be a question for the Congress to amend. But at the current time, I would have to a little bit more in depth. I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay. That's all my questioning for this round.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Senator Cranfield.
Yeah, okay. So, I don't know if you guys had skipped me or what, but sorry I was away. I had some kick-ass biscuits and gravy for dinner. So, anyway.
That's understandable. Gotta have the biscuits.
Yeah, it's pretty good biscuits and gravy. Anyway, so correct me or help me if this question has already been asked, but in the event that a massive economic recession sort of thing hit MEC, how would you, with the help?
It hasn't been asked.
Okay,
so
good.
Continue.
Good. So if that happened, how would you not only run your department or your this is I'm not sure, is it a department? Is it some sort of?
It's a Federal Reserve.
It's a Federal Reserve
entity.
It's a federal agency of the United States of America. Okay, so how would you run your agency and at the same time advise the president on strategic info as to fix the problem if that was to arise?
Well, I appreciate the question. This is a very broad question. So I wouldn't be able to advise the president on a broad question like that. But I mean,
so basically what I'm saying is,
right,
or what you're saying is, you wouldn't be able to advise the president if a economic recession hit MEC.
I would, but it depends. I can't advise him to take a certain action if I don't know what's causing the issue. Like, for instance, if let's say,
okay,
there's mass, I don't know, maybe there's too much spending or something like that, or everyone.
Well, let me give you an example.
Sure.
So, say the world economy collapses due to some sort of diplomatic problem in the Middle East, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that sparks.
I'm sorry, you're cutting in and out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It might be me on my data. I apologize.
So did you hear what I asked? Let's say there was a massive a world recession.
Okay.
And the United States happened to be collateral damage in that problem.
Mm-hmm.
How would you respond to that?
So so there's probably so you're saying that so it's a recession, so it should be high unemployment. What I would probably do is I would try to incentivize people to take as many loans out as possible,
Okay.
and invest and get businesses to invest heavily into the economy by incentivizing them with low interest rates.
Okay. So you mentioned unemployment. That kind of ties into my next question, if I may. So one of your jobs as chairman of this, or one of the responsibilities of the Federal Reserve is to maximize employment. But outside of national employment, how would you plan to maximize the employment within the agency?
Within the agency,
Yes.
maximize. Are you referring to maximizing the amount of bank employees we have? Is that what your
Yes.
question is?
Yes.
I can't control, how many
Well,
employees the
I
banks
understand.
hire.
I understand, but you can control an environment in which it is
Sure.
open to people. How would you like the climate of what you're trying to convey to your employees?
Mhm.
What sort of climate do you wish to convey?
To my employees being people who work directly for my office or people who
Everybody, because you're in charge of everything basically, and your agency. You along with the board of governors, of course, but since you're
Right.
the chairman, you obviously have sole discretion.
right. I'm sorry. It's just that your question's so it's kind of vague. To be frank with you,
Okay, I understand. I understand. I'm going to yield my time.
I appreciate the question.
Senator Bates.
Okay, so you talked about what you would do in the case of a recession, but do you have any plans for any action you would take if there is no big event? A lot of secretaries will co-write a bill with congressmen and get that signed into law. Do you have any that's relating to their department? Do you have any plans like that for your tenure if confirmed?
Do I have any bills to propose to Congress? Is that what your question is? As in my capacity?
Yeah, or something to that effect.
At the current time, not really. My goal as chairman is to keep the economy as boring as possible, while making sure it grows. So
if there were no event relating to the economy, you would not be doing anything in your term.
if there was no event related to the economy, that I would just be making sure that maintaining the unemployment and the interest rates. That's about it. And I might increase it by 0.25% or decrease it by 0.25%, depending on how the markets sway.
Mm-hmm. And do you think there are any systemic problems that would have to be fixed to maintain a stable economy?
In the current environment of where we are today,
Mm-hmm.
Possibly our federal debt, the amount of government spending, cutting government spending, that also has an effect. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with the crowding effect. That's something I would encourage senators to look into, especially when it comes to it come to the House first. But for fiscal policy, the crowding out effect is something that would have to do with government and government policy, and so that'd be something I would try to encourage to be implemented a little bit into bills.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay. Does any other senator have any other questions?
I do.
Okay, good, Jacob. Trey?
Okay, can I go?
I'll take it. No, I still have questions.
I'm sorry.
I'm still looking for something
Okay, good. Senator Bates, do you have any other questions?
Unless I think of more, which I don't think I will. No.
Okay, so we're continuing this. I've got only one question, Mr. Roy, and the question is, well, the question is actually pretty broad, but still. In the Depository Institutions, the Regulation and Monetary Control Act of 1980, Congress reaffirmed that the Federal Reserve should promote an efficient nationwide payments system. The Act subjects all depository institutions, not just member commercial banks, to reserve requirements and grants them equal access to Reserve Bank payment services. The Federal Reserve plays a role in the nation's retail and wholesale payments systems, and by providing financial services to depository institutions. So, I think things are pretty clear here. So, would you be? I could go on with the, well, let's call it description, but I think you get the bigger picture. Would you propose any sort of reform or innovation in the national payment system?
That would be something to explore. At the current time, I'm going to go ahead and say no.
Okay. Senator Tony. Also, no, sorry. I wanted just to make sure something. You're independent from what's your home state, and you're independent by party affiliation, right?
I have no idea. I don't believe I'm actually registered with MEX. I was at one point, and my party affiliation.
Okay, what's your MEC home state? We need to have a home
Florida. It's Florida.
Okay. All right, Senator Tony.
Okay, thank you. So responsibility of the of the chairman is to host the conference of chairs. So what that is collectively the chairs of the 12 reserve bank boards comprise the conference of chairs. It's also called the COC, which meets 2 times a year, each time in Washington D.C. And by tradition, reserve bank deputy chairs aren't included in COC meetings, but Class C directors and Class B directors are not. So would you be open to including them into the conference of chairs to get everyone's opinion on things to make sure that the right things occur with the banks?
Yes.
Okay. Another role of the chairman is to connect the Federal Reserve and private sector. So would you be open to privatizing more parts of the Federal Reserve to better spread out the money, that to make sure that if we do have an economic recession, that all of the government's money is not lost?
That'd definitely be something to explore.
Okay, that's all I have.
Does any other senator have any other questions?
Yeah, can I go?
Yes.
Okay. So, obviously the president was sworn in, I think 2 weeks ago, coming up this weekend. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the presidential terms are 4 months, or 4 weeks. And
6 weeks. 6 weeks.
Okay, 6 weeks. So, obviously, a lot of plans have been asked today in this hearing, and you have made the quote, there's a lot of things to be explored on. So, do you think that you have enough time to explore all these options and not only explore them, but implement them through advice and consent, basically through Congress?
Depending on how efficiently Congress works.
Okay. So, if you are confirmed and sworn in, what exactly is your first objective?
My first objective is to find my feet where I'm standing. I would like to. I understand this is a simulation.
Yeah.
I'm not delusional, and I understand that there isn't really infrastructure set up for this position just yet. So I
Right.
would like to start by um, consulting with the vice president and the president on how we can establish a purpose for my position a little bit more elaborately.
So, would you establish, along with your position, a board of governors and a sort of committee-like thing that you would consult?
I may if it's
If it's
if it's
relevant.
doable. If it's doable, I understand. Currently, we have an issue with senators, even where a lot of people are inactive.
Right.
Cabinet members. I understand the president's having a hard time right now trying to find cabinet members that aren't already in a position.
I got it. So, yeah, I think that's it. Chirp, chirp.
I use Twitter.
Hello, Ivor.
I have nothing
Agent
more.
Ivor.
Russia is your
Okay.
god.
Yeah, I believe that no one has any other questions, meaning that this hearing shall be finished right now. This call needs to stop. This can not longer be broadcasted,